Today's topic is modernist criticism. Now let us try to understand about modernist criticism. The modernist criticism was started during the late 19th and early 20th centuries. So it was began during the late 19th and early 20th centuries. So it reflects, the modernist criticism reflects the strong, the profound cultural and social and intellectual changes of that particular time of the 19th and early 20th century period. And this form of this modernist criticism began, okay, in the response to the traditional modes of thought. It was a response to the conventional pattern of thought, and particularly it was a response to Victorian and Romantic ideals. And this modernist criticism, it seeks out, it pursued out to redefine literature and art. The modernist criticism here, it redefines, it reinterprets literature and art, and focusing particularly on innovations and fragmentation and the complexities, the difficulties of the modern life. Now let us try to understand the historical concept of the modernist period. The modernist period roughly started in the year 1890, in the year 1890, and it was continued up to 1940. So during this time, during this modernist period, the modernism, we find industrialization, the rapid development of industries and urbanization, the rapid uh, development of the cities, urban areas. And the next aspect is, we also find that the traumatic, the distressing and disturbing, the impact of World War I and World War II on the modernist period, the impact and influence of the World War I and World War II also we find on the modernist period. And the third point is, we find scientific advancements during this period. For example, Albert Einstein's theory of relativity and Freudian psychology. So, such scientific advancement, the scientific development happened during the modern period, and then even the philosophical developments also happened. For example, Nietzsche's critique of traditional morality and existentialism. These philosophical ideas also started during this time, and a crisis of faith and the rise of secularism we find during this period. So there is a crisis of faith and trust, and at the same time there is a rise of secularism during modernist period, modern time, modernism. And we also find increased global interconnectedness. So the rapid global interconnectedness and cultural exchanges during the modernism. So these changes, all these, the transformations disturbed the traditional ways of thinking, the conventional method of thinking, and prompting artists and critics to explore new forms of expression. So, because of all these changes which happened during that time, so we find there is an exploration about the new ways of expressions. Now, let us try to understand the characteristics of modernist criticism. So, the first feature is, we find the focus on formal experimentation. It is the formal experimentation, the conventional experimentation, methodical experimentation. So modernist criticism prioritized, they have given more importance to the innovation in form and structure. So something new in innovation, something creatively created the new in the form and structure, and emphasizing the autonomy of the work of art, that is the independence, okay, the freedom of the work of art. So therefore the new inventions in the form and structure, we find this kind of fragmentation, stream of consciousness, and non-linear narratives. Fragmentations, that is completely disintegration, and the stream of consciousness, the inner thoughts and inner feelings, and then non-linear, which are not in a sequential method of narration, have become central during the time, modernist period. So the first characteristic is they focus more on the formal experimentation. The second characteristic is rejection of the traditional values. So the modernist critics, they rejected the conventional values. The critics and writers, they challenged, they questioned the Victorian and neoclassical rules and principles. So particularly their emphasis on the moral didacticism. Okay, didacticism. They particularly questioned that moral teachings, the moral didacticism. So the modern critics and writers, they questioned these Victorian and neoclassical norms. They also considered to explore the human experience. They explore the human experience in its complexity and ambiguity. Understand? So the modern critics and writers, they want to explore the human experiences and its complexity, its the complicated issues and the ambiguity, the multiple uh, that vagueness, inexactness, understand, having multiple meanings in the human experiences. That is the second characteristic. And the third one is emphasizing on subjectivity and inner experience. So here, subjectivity means influenced by the personal feelings. So the modernist criticism has given more value to the exploration of human psyche, that is, exploration of human feelings, human mind, and often influenced by, it was Freud and Jung, Sigmund Freud and Carl Jung. So even the modern criticism examined how perception, how we understand, and consciousness shape reality, how our understanding and interpretation and our awareness shape the change the reality. And the fourth characteristic is alienation and individualism. Individual alienation, that is isolation. Alienation means separation, isolation. The themes of alienation, dislocation, and existential despair, the hopelessness, were central to the modernist works. So the themes like alienation, isolation, dislocation, and existential hopelessness were important themes in the modernist works, and criticism often explored these themes. The critics also explored these themes of alienation, dislocation, and existential despairs as reflections of the modern life's fragmentation. So all these themes reflects the modern life's fragmentation, the disintegration. Understand? The next feature is interdisciplinary approach. So it is having it is related to different areas and different branches of knowledge. So the critics, they have derived attracted from they derived from philosophy, psychoanalysis, sociology, and anthropology. The ideas they have derived from these branches of knowledge like philosophy, psychoanalysis, sociology, and anthropology to understand the literature's deeper implications, the literature's deeper consequences, understand the deeper meanings during the modernist time. The next characteristic is art for art's sake. See, modernist criticism, they often align with, okay, they are aligned with aestheticism. So they are agreed with or allied with aestheticism, so which give more importance to the beauty and art for art's sake, and asserting that strongly supporting that art need not serve moral or utilitarian purposes. So the modernist critics also, they support that art, it should not serve the moral or some utilitarian purposes, utilitarian uses, understand. And the last characteristic is focus on myth and archetype. So myth is a traditional story, that is a folklore, and archetypes, so these are the typical examples, the typical patterns. So here in the modernist criticism, modernist time, so the modernist critics, inspired by the thinkers like James Fraser, James Fraser's work, The Golden Bough, and the Carl Jung, okay, they explored, inspired by these thinkers, the modernist critics explored the recurring myths, the repeatedly occurring myths, the folk stories, the traditional stories, and symbols in literature. So the modernist critics, they influenced by the thinkers like James Fraser and Carl Jung, they explored the repeatedly occurring folk stories and traditional stories and symbols in literature of the modernist, the modern period. Now let us try to understand the major figures and their contributions during modernist criticism. The first critic is the T.S. Eliot. His time period started in 1888 and ended in 1965. So T.S. Eliot's important works are Tradition and Individual Talent, which was published in 1919. The second one is The Sacred Wood, which was published in 1920. So T.S. Eliot contributed to this modernist criticism. So he supported for the impersonality, impersonality of art, that is detachment from the personal feeling. Okay, so it should not be influenced by the personal feeling. He supported that impersonality of art, where that personal emotions are subsumed, understand, by a universal tradition. So personal emotions are included, subsumed means included by universal tradition. And he also highlighted the role of tradition in shaping literature. The role of the tradition in shaping literature, and emphasized on intertextuality, that is relationship between the different literary texts. And he also, T.S. Eliot also introduced the idea of objective correlative. So the objective correlative, which is a set of objects and situations or events that evoke specific emotions. So different objects and situations, objective correlative here means so some objects, situations and events that evoke, that brings a kind of feeling, a kind of specific emotions, that arouse a kind of specific emotions. That is about the TSL's contributions. Now, the next critic is Ezra Pound, whose time period started in 1885 and ended in 1972. So, his key works are The ABC of Reading, which was published in 1934, and Essays in the Egoist and the Little Review. He wrote some essays in the Egoist and the Little Review periodicals. The Ezra Pound contributions to modernist criticism. He was a champion. He supported imagism and emphasizing that clarity, precision, and economy of language. Ezra Pound, he emphasized that the clarity is very important and the precision, that exactness, accurateness, and the economy of using less words and conveying more meaning. Understand? That is economy of language. And he also promoted for the reinvention of poetic form and content, for the transformation of poetic form and content, that is matter. Understand? The next critic is Virginia Woolf, whose time period started in 1882 and ended in 1941. Her key works, important works, are Modern Fiction, which was published in 1919, and A Room of One's Own, which was published in 1929. Virginia Woolf's contributions to modernist criticism. So she was a critic. She assessed the Edwardian writers. She critiqued the Edwardian writers for their focus on external reality at the expense of inner consciousness. So the Edwardian writers, they give more importance to the exterior reality, the external, the outer reality, instead of the inner consciousness, inner feelings, inner emotions. So that's why she assessed she criticized the Edwardian writers, and Virginia Woolf also emphasized the importance of capturing fleeting moments of experience. So she stressed more on the recording the fleeting moments, the brief, the lasting moments of experience, the moments of being. Understand? The next critic is James Joyce, whose time period started in 1882 and ended in 1941. James Joyce's important works, Ulysses, which was published in 1922, and some critical essays are there. James Joyce, he expanded his contribution to modernist criticism is he expanded the use of stream of consciousness as a narrative technique. James Joyce, he enlarged that the use of stream of consciousness technique, that is the flow of inner thoughts, inner feelings, stream of consciousness technique is all about the flow of our inner thoughts and inner feelings as a narrative technique, as a narration technique. And he also explored the interplay between, the interaction between myth and the contemporary life, traditional stories and the contemporary life. The next critic is F.R. Lewis, whose time period started in 1895 and ended in 1978. His important work is The Great Tradition, which was published in 1948. F.R. Leavy's contributions he supported for the moral seriousness in literature. He promoted that moral seriousness in literature and criticizing modernism's perceived detachment, that perceived, the recognized uh, disconnection. Understand? He criticized that modernism's recognized detachment, okay, disintegration or disconnection. Yeah. F.R. Lewis also emphasized the close reading and detailed textual analysis. He also emphasized more on the close reading and detailed textual analysis. These are the contributions of F.R. Lewis. So the next critic is Sigmund Freud, whose time period started in 1856 and ended in 1939. So his important work is The Interpretation of Dreams, which was published in 1900. So Sigmund Freud inspired modernist critics to explore the unconsciousness mind, to explore that subconscious, the inner self mind in literature. And he also introduced the concepts of repression. Repression means suppression, desire, and Oedipus complex as analytical tool for analyzing literature, for analyzing texts, different texts. And the next critic is Marcel Proust, whose time period started in 1871 and ended in 1922. His important work is In Search of Lost Time, which was published in 1913 and ended in, published between 1913 to 1927. So his important contributions to modernist criticism, Marcel Proust explored memory, time, and identity in literature. So he also highlighted the interconnection between subjective experience and universal truths. That is, inner experience, okay, the personal experience and the universal truths. These are the important critics and their important key works, some of the important key works and their contributions to modernist critics. I hope you understand this. If you like, please, if you like the content, please like, share, and subscribe. Thank you so much.